think we see Willis coming out.
Anthony for three. Bang! Slicing, dicing right there. Swooping, hooping.
Houston ducks under. Got it!
Jeremy Lin does it again.
Johnson now fires a three. And it's good! And he's fouled!
7 feet from Georgetown. Number 33. Your captain.
This is Bockers Beat with Jeff Haber.
And now, please welcome your New York Knicks.
Welcome to Bockers Beat. We're back. We took a week off. Feels like it's been a long hiatus, though, and now we're back with good news. We are now on Spotify. So if you listen to Spotify, if that's where you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow us, subscribe. Bockers Beat is now on Spotify, as well as Spreaker and SoundCloud and YouTube and iHeartRadio. And we do a lot out of our Twitter account, and I'm excited because we've also kind of taken the week and a half off of live tweeting games. So we'll be back doing that, starting with their next game, which we're recording this before the Magic game, so their next game is Tuesday against the Trailblazers. That'll be the next game we live tweet. What's up? Jeff Haber here, and I'm very excited because so far all of our guests have been millennials, Knicks fans who remember the 90s. They block out the Marbury years from their memories. They remember David Lee and Nate Robinson and then Carmelo Anthony years and, of course, this team. But our guest, good friend of my dad's growing up, they were season ticket holders together in the 70s, 80s, 90s, all up until today. That has been passed down now to myself and my brother. So we've been talking about kind of who our favorite Knicks are in the millennial, the 90s and 2000s. We finally get to talk about the 70s Knicks and the 80s Knicks with Jay Raskin. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you?
Good. It's good to hear from you. Now, we have been on hiatus. So the last time we recorded a podcast, it was right before the Knicks played the Warriors, which they kept it close, and then Durant went off in the fourth, and they ended up losing by 28. Just a quick recap, they beat the Nets, they lost to the Pacers in a close one, they beat the Mavericks, and then they lost to the Wizards, double overtime loss to the Bulls, they beat the Hawks, and then they have recently just gotten blown out by the Raptors, which kind of feels like a bit of a theme. Getting blown out by these really good teams like the Warriors and the Raptors, that's something we're going to have to live with all season long. I know we kept it close against the Celtics, but that just might be an anomaly.
And they decided to turn it on. Yeah, your dad
right.
And I used to say that a lot of times during the bad Knicks teams. Like, the other team would just kind of play the Knicks even and then decide it's time to win, and then they just turn it on.
But we
turn it up a notch.
Right, which that happened against the Warriors when Durant went off in the fourth, and we kept it close with the Celtics.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's possible for us to beat these good teams. I just don't think it's going to happen. Here's my question to you, Jay. Do you think beating these poor teams are kind of hurting our chances of getting a top pick? Would you rather the Knicks lose?
Yeah, well, that thought was running through my mind as we were talking, and I think so. I mean, it's bad. It's bad for the fans and everything, but I think that if we could have another good draft pick in the next draft, I think that would be more advantageous because to play 4-9 ball, whatever, 200% ball or whatever it is, I guess it's for like 300%. But to just play mediocre basketball and most likely not be able to get into the playoffs, you might as well have a really lousy record.
Right. But we've lost some really close games. We went down to the wire against the Nets, double overtime against the Bulls, close against the Celtics. I mean, if the ball bounces the right way, we could be 7-6, and we'd be talking about how this team is a playoff team.
I guess it's possible. I don't see it. I don't see it, especially if KP is going to be out, certainly for most of the season, if not all of the season. And I don't think I see them getting into the playoffs. I just don't think the odds are with the Knicks.
Right. Now, let's talk quickly about Porzingis because Fitzdale says he's not close to coming back. He's not very far along. And then KP goes ahead and tweets a picture of himself sprinting on a track and says, hey, look at me. I'm ready to go. Do you read into these headlines at all? I mean, is Fitz making a mistake? Do we give him a pass? Do we hound him for it?
I think from the coach was basically, being very cautiously optimistic and just saying that he's kind of been plateauing lately. He hasn't really been making any significant progress or strides in his recovery, and then KP was taking exception to that. Well, I think it's the coach. It's like now I see in the news with D'Antoni's having trouble with Melo, or the usual coming off the bench, and D'Antoni is listen. I'm just worried about the next game I'm coaching. I'm not, I'm focusing on that. Talk to the GM about this. I think that's with Fizdale. The notion of even thinking about KP being back in the lineup is something that's still relatively far off, and not something that's really on his radar.
Right.
So I think he's just saying, let's just chill out and let's not assume that he's going to make a miraculous, premature comeback.
Right. Would you rather the Knicks bring back Porzingis to start winning more games earlier, or would you rather kind of maybe the opposite and just have him sit the entire season? I mean, what?
Well, I think the perspective of the coach's perspective versus the fans' perspective would be two different perspectives. Because I would say,
well, I want to know your perspective.
I think that from the coach's perspective is, I'd like to have him back as soon as possible and win games. From my fans' perspective, honestly, it probably would be best to have him sit out most or all of the season and just maybe really primarily just to be fully recovered so that he can go into next October, 100% with no doubts. And rather than coming back, I mean, the worst possible scenario would be he would come back, let's say in, February or whatever, and get re-injured. Tweak something, and then that's a setback. And then now it's like, will he even be available in October of 2019?
Right.
So, I think it would be better to just be very cautious, and even if he thinks he's ready, just sit him down, sign him up to the max contract, and get a fresh start in 2019.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's funny. I think Fitzdale wants to take it slow with him, too. I don't think he's in any rush to bring Porzingis back because with Porzingis being out, it opens up minutes for other guys on the team. I mean, we saw what the Knox injury did. When Knox went down and Dotson stepped up and has been playing awesome. With Porzingis out, it's opened up minutes for Mitchell Robinson, Noah Vonleh, Mario Hezonja. So I think Fitzdale wants to still see what these guys have, what they can bring to the table. Because Porzingis is going to play like Porzingis when he is 100%.
Right, he's a given. He'll be a given quantity, hopefully.
Right. We don't know what we're going to get out of Mario in next season if we decide to bring him back. That's still a maybe. We might bring back Noah Vonleh. That's still a maybe. Let's see what we can get out of these guys to see if they're worth having on the team next year when that might be a year we ultimately say, okay, let's make our run for the playoffs.
Right.
Now, the other thing about Porzingis is that if he does come back early, it does show possible free agents that, hey, we got a healthy unicorn here, a healthy superstar that's here ready to make a difference and for you, the new free agent, to come play with.
Yes. Well, I agree. I mean, and even to give the fans a glimmer of hope as season ticket subscriptions, get renewed towards the end of the season or right at the end of the season. Yeah, sure. I guess ideally you bring him back towards the tail end of the season, which just tries to get him as recovered and rehabilitated as possible at that point, and put him out there for 15, 20 minutes. Some games and just kind of see how he's feeling and how he's doing. Yeah, I imagine it would be difficult for the Knicks and Porzingis to restrain themselves from wanting to do that. So I imagine the odds are that we will see him on the court before the season is over.
Hopefully we do. Let's talk really quick. Do you see this Jimmy Butler trade?
Yes, I sure did. And God knows what the heck was the issue with him. I mean, it seemed like all this time he felt like he was disrespected or whatever, and just kind of pointing fingers at Towns and Wiggins, and God, that just seemed like a poisonous locker room, poisonous situation with that team. And as much as he was supposedly close with Coach Tibbs, I guess it just wasn't meant to be.
But it still was, I felt like the relationship when, with Tibbs in Minnesota was different than the relationship when he was with Tibbs in Chicago, because even towards the end, he went to Tibbs and said, hey, I don't want to be playing 40 minutes, and Tibbs was kind of like, too bad. Like, I'm going to play you as much as I want to play you. And I think that relationship kind of was, deteriorating over time, too. I think Tibbs wasn't making it any better.
Yeah. Yes, I guess you're right. Yeah, that relationship had soured, obviously, and I guess that was just inevitable. And I guess Minnesota, they had various offers. They had 4 top draft picks where they were being offered by the Rockets, and this and that. But I guess they felt as though getting a couple of starters from the Sixers. It seemed, from what I can see, it seemed like it was a fairly decent trade that the Wolves were able to pull off.
Right.
And get some immediate value rather than future draft picks. At least they can show the fans that they got a couple of starting level players for this trade. And I'm sure the fans were just as happy to see. I can't really speak for the Minnesota fans, but they probably wanted to see the situation resolved.
Yeah, and I think they also wanted a first-round pick, which they never really got. I mean, they got Sark, who could be a really good player, and Covington seems like a good glue guy. I don't know how happy Minnesota fans are for that, but I care more about the Knicks fans and what we think about this trade, because Jimmy Butler was one of maybe 3 or 4 superstar players that were going to be free agents next year that was thinking about going to New York.
Yes.
And it seems like that is off the table, because the 76ers would not be making this trade if they didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign Butler. So it looks like Butler will stay in Philadelphia and sign a contract with them. And I believe he makes more money if he does that too.
I saw that. I was reading an article in the Times today. He could make, I believe, an extra $50 million or so, with the ability for them to re-sign a free agent of their, on their own team. I see here that if the Sixers are able to re-sign him after this, he could be offered a $190 million contract. If other teams sign him, the max he could get is $141 million. So that's a $50 million difference.
Right.
So that alone, I guess, would give Butler incentive to want to re-sign with the Sixers, not to mention the fact that the Sixers are a team with potential.
Yeah, and he'll be on a winning team, and it just seems like this idea of the Knicks landing a big free agent, their chances are just dwindling. I mean, Kevin Durant, the Warriors made a new pitch to him recently where they gave him a tour of their new arena in San Francisco. And Kevin looks, he's got to be happy with the Warriors. He said it over and over. He wants to stay with the Warriors. We don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems like...
Why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't you stay there if they're giving him the max? Kawhi is with an unstoppable Toronto team where, again, why would you want to leave a team as good as that? That just seems like a perfectly built team.
No, what a start they've gotten out to. That's incredible. I don't think anybody necessarily would have seen them, starting out with this incredible record.
I mean, we thought they'd be good, but 12-1 is ridiculous. And it's so funny. I think a lot of us looked at that DeMar DeRozan trade and thought, Kawhi's not that much of an upgrade over DeMar DeRozan, but it's not. That trade just seems huge. I mean, DeMar's a great player, but I think Kawhi is showing that he could be arguably one of the, top 5, top 3 players in the NBA behind LeBron and Durant.
You'd have to think so. I mean, whatever he's